In this lecture, we introduce the structure needed for improvement of quality and productivity. What type of organization structure is needed in order to establish quality and productivity as a business strategy? The current practice in many organizations are depicted in this slide, the old way to view an organization. In such a structure, the organization is divided into parts, perhaps operations, marketing, finance, and so forth. Or perhaps these are different divisions. Or perhaps they may represent shifts, different operations. And each division and each part is given independent objectives. And the aim here is, if we give independent objectives to each division, and each division is optimized individually, then the entire organization is optimized. Such a structure does not portray interdependence and interactions of various functional areas. In other words, it doesn't show how these parts are related to each other and how they have to work together and interact with each other. This structure emphasizes individual accountability and control, as though that there is no interdependence or interaction among the parts. This destroys teamwork. Perhaps some of the objectives are counter to each other and causes the silo effect and destroys teamwork. There is no reference to products, customers, and end users in this structure, and it's slow to react to changes and improvements in the environment. The decisions are made at the top and they are funneled down to the bottom. This is a slide that I have seen for many years. The hidden assumption here is that the management, the managers, the upper management at the top make all the decisions. They are thinkers and decision makers, and then the workers, the people at the bottom, have no input in the process. Essentially, they have no heads. Park your brains outside in the morning and then come in. So, as mentioned earlier, what's missing from that structure? The most important function that's missing from that, or feature that's missing from that, are interactions and interdependencies, the fundamental characteristics. The cross-functional activities, the interactions and interdependencies are not emphasized or depicted in this structure. Dr. Deming many years ago introduced production viewed as a system, and later on was recognized as organization viewed as a system. He said that a system is a network of interdependent components that work together to try to accomplish the aim of the system. There are several words in this definition that are very important. The network, interdependencies, working together, and for a purpose. He suggested that the aim of the organization must be towards the consumers. We have to find out, research, identify the customers or consumers' needs not only today but into the future through consumer research. Take those ideas, the research, into design and redesign of products and services. By including our suppliers, are becoming a part of our system, we develop new products and new services. And these are the internal processes to deliver new products and new services to consumers. There are two very important features here to consider. First is the cyclical relationship that exists among the parts. It goes in a cycle. It's not a linear or a top-bottom relationship. The second is the inclusion of many parts into that. Here, consumers or the customers are a part of the system. The suppliers are a part of the system. In most organizations, the relationship between the suppliers and the organization is arm's length. The customers become a part of the process. We continually identify the customers or consumers' needs not only for today but for the future, and we include that into our design and redesign of the products and services we produce. This is the organization viewed as a system that is necessary for improvement of quality and productivity. Therefore, a system is a whole that cannot be divided into independent parts or subgroup of parts. In the definition of the system, the word network is very important. A network is a series of connected parts or components. Also, the system has a name, has a purpose. We don't simply do random walks. Collection of activities is not a system. The system must have an aim or a purpose. Also, the interdependencies and interactions are the most important features of the system. The parts and components of the system interact, and they are interdependent. People are a part of the system. They're not entirely the only component or the only part of the system. There are other factors in the system that interact with people that must be considered. Peter Schultes and colleagues later on developed the SIPOC model. Simply took Dr. Deming's idea and converted it or introduced the SIPOC model, that the suppliers, input, process, output, and customers. One of the features here that is important to identify is this notion of the feedback loop. How the feedback loop connects the purpose and the customer's needs into our processes and systems. There are two voices or two feedback loops that we must take into account. One is the voice of the customer and one is the voice of the process or the system. So here we have the voice of the customer and the voice of the process. The voice of the process is the actual output or the result of what the process gives. If there is a difference or a gap between the voice of the process and the voice of the customer, then we face many challenges. The voice of the process must match and meet the voice of the customers. Many of the problems and the challenges and quality problems that organizations face is because of the gap between the voice of the process and the voice of the customer. This is especially important to know as how the customer defines quality. Oftentimes the processes or the organizations define quality as they see it rather than how the customer defines quality. This leads to the gap between these two voices and perhaps to reduction in market share or loss of customers. It doesn't matter how an organization defines quality or how effective or efficient they think the processes are, but do these processes meet the voice of the customer? Therefore, this feedback loop is very, very important. So we need to establish feedback loop and maintain routine processes by which customers, internal or customers, share data with important suppliers. The feedback loop is the link between the customer and the organization and provides key indicators of quality and productivity as identified by customers. And the purpose of feedback is improvement, not judgment. The feedback loop is continuous, based on data, and leads to improvement. One example of a feedback loop, essentially feedback loop is an engineering and technical concept. One example of a feedback loop is a thermostat. The thermostat continually identifies or scans the environment and collects data on the temperature in the environment and continuously sends signal to the compressor. Depending on that feedback loop and the type of information received, the compressor reacts, whether it increases the temperature or either warms up the environment or cools down the environment. Therefore, it is a continuous process based on data, and it leads to an improvement in the environment.